The quiet life ends with a knock that changes everything. One moment, Casey Dutton is holding on to what little peace he has left, and the next, the past drags him back into a world of violence, loss, and unfinished justice. A single tragedy opens a door that was never meant to be reopened, and once it is open, there is no turning back. What happened in the shadows will now come into the light, and the cost of truth will be higher than anyone expects. The calm life Casey Dutton fought to build is shattered in an instant. In Marshals Episode 1, tragedy drags him back into a world he thought he left behind, one of danger, loss, and vengeance. As Casey joins the U.S. Marshals, he must navigate a web of threats, uncover the truth behind Monica's death, and protect his son Tate from a darkness that threatens to consume them both. With a team of skilled yet scarred marshals, Andrea, Belle, and the steady leadership of Pete Calvin, Casey faces moral dilemmas, deadly adversaries, and a justice system that often fails those who need it most. Every decision carries a price, every lead raises the stakes, and every truth comes at a cost. This premiere episode sets the stage for a suspense-filled journey where grief ignites purpose, and the line between justice and revenge is razor thin. Prepare for action, heartbreak, and the start of a hunt that will change everything. Casey Dutton did not leave his old life behind because he wanted to. He left because he was tired of burying parts of himself every time the world demanded another sacrifice. At East Camp, life finally felt quiet. Not perfect, not easy, but quiet enough to breathe. Monica and Tate were his anchor, the reason he believed that maybe violence did not have to be inherited, that maybe his son could grow up without learning how to survive by pulling a trigger. That belief dies in the opening moments of Marshals. The peace Casey fought so hard to protect is ripped away in a way that feels sudden, brutal, and deeply personal. This is not a loss that time can soften. This is a wound that demands answers. The weight of what happens does not sit only on Casey's shoulders. It spreads through every decision he makes from this point forward. Grief does not arrive gently here. It arrives like a storm, loud and unforgiving, leaving no space to hide. Casey is forced to face a truth he has tried to outrun for years. When violence takes something from you, it does not care how badly you wanted a different life. The system that failed to protect his family now expects him to trust it. That contradiction burns inside him. He knows that if he stays where he is, the questions will eat him alive. If he leaves, he risks becoming the man he promised himself he would never be again. The call from the U.S. Marshals does not come as an invitation. It comes as a reminder of who Casey was trained to be. Pete Calvin, a man who knows Casey better than most, does not offer comfort or speeches. He offers purpose. He offers a chance to turn pain into direction. Pete understands that Casey does not need motivation. He needs permission. Permission to step back into the dark places he knows too well. Permission to hunt the truth without pretending he can heal by standing still. Joining the Marshals is not about justice alone. It is about survival, because doing nothing would destroy him faster than any bullet ever could. As Casey prepares to leave, the silence around Tate becomes unbearable. His son's grief is different, sharper in ways that scare Casey more than his own anger. Tate has already seen too much for someone his age, and now he has lost the one person who softened the world for him. Casey realizes that protecting his son no longer means keeping him close. It means making sure the truth is found before hatred poisons what little innocence Tate has left. This realization hurts more than the loss itself, because it confirms Casey's deepest fear. The violence he tried to escape has found its way into his family again. Marshals Episode 1 is not about action for the sake of spectacle. It is about the moment a man accepts that peace was only borrowed, not earned. Casey's decision to walk away from East Camp is heavy, final, and full of consequences that will echo through every episode that follows. By the end of this first chapter, one thing is clear. This is not a story about starting over. It is a story about stepping forward when there is nothing left to lose, and discovering that the fight ahead will demand more than strength. It will demand everything he has left. Becoming a U.S. Marshal does not feel like a promotion to Casey Dutton. It feels like a sentence he chose for himself. The badge carries weight, not because of authority, but because of what it represents. Rules, limits, and a system that often arrives too late. Casey steps into this world knowing full well that the law did not save his family, and yet here he is, agreeing to enforce it. From the very beginning, the tension is clear. He is not here to build a career. He is here because this path leads closer to the truth, and truth is the only thing keeping him upright. Pete Calvin makes it clear that this unit is different. These marshals are not chasing small criminals or easy arrests. They go where jurisdiction breaks down, where politics get messy, and where justice usually disappears quietly. Pete does not sell the job as heroic. He calls it lonely, dangerous, and morally exhausting. That honesty is exactly why Casey listens. Pete knows Casey's past as a Navy SEAL, knows the lines he is willing to cross, and more importantly, knows the ones he refuses to cross. There is respect between them, but also an understanding that grief makes people unpredictable. Pete keeps Casey close, not to control him, but to make sure he does not burn himself alive chasing revenge disguised as duty. As Casey meets the rest of the team, he realizes quickly that this is not a group held together by friendship. It is held together by scars. Andrea carries the sharp edge of someone who spoke the truth once and paid for it. She watches everything, says little, and trusts no one easily. Belle moves through conversations with warmth, but there is calculation behind her eyes, the kind that comes from years of living undercover and never fully being yourself. Miles stands apart in a different way. His connection to the Broken Rock Reservation gives him a moral center that does not bend easily, and that strength quietly challenges everyone around him, including Casey. The case tied to Casey's loss is not officially his. On paper, it belongs to a system that moves slowly and carefully, but unofficially, everyone knows why he is here. Leads begin to surface that point toward organized hostility against Native Americans, crimes buried under excuses and lack of evidence. These are not random acts. They are patterns. And patterns mean planning. Casey feels the familiar pull of instinct, the urge to move fast and strike hard, but this time he is surrounded by people who will not let him operate alone. That restriction frustrates him, but it also saves him from himself. What makes this episode powerful is not the violence, but the restraint. Every step forward feels like walking through smoke, where shapes are visible, but nothing is clear. Casey starts to understand that this job will force him to confront something harder than gunfights. It will force him to work within a team, to listen, and to accept that justice is rarely clean. The Marshals do not promise closure. They promise pursuit. And for Casey, that is enough to keep going, even when sleep becomes impossible and memories refuse to stay buried. By the end of this section, the badge no longer feels like an option. It feels like a burden Casey has accepted knowingly. The enemy is still faceless, the truth still distant, and the cost of finding it is becoming clearer by the hour. Marshals is setting the stage for a story where every answer creates a new question, and every step toward justice risks pulling Casey further away from the man he wanted to be. While Casey steps deeper into the world of the U.S. Marshals, the real danger begins to grow in silence. Grief does not stay still. It changes shape, and for Tate, it turns into something sharp and restless. He is no longer the quiet child trying to understand the chaos around him. He is old enough to feel anger, old enough to connect loss with blame, and old enough to believe that doing nothing is the same as accepting injustice. This is what truly scares Casey. He knows that look in Tate's eyes because he has seen it before, in mirrors and in men who never came back from the edge. Casey's absence, even though it is necessary, creates a space that fills quickly with unanswered questions. Tate does not trust the idea that the law will fix everything. He has grown up watching powerful people bend rules and survive without consequences. Monica was his moral compass, the voice that reminded him that anger does not have to define who he becomes. Without her, Tate begins to drift. Casey senses it in every conversation, every silence that lasts a second too long. Protecting his son now feels harder than facing armed criminals because this is a battle he cannot fight with force. At the same time, Thomas, Rainwater, and Mo begin moving in their own way. They do not wear badges, but they understand injustice better than most. Monica's death is not just personal to Casey, it is symbolic to them. It represents a long history of violence that is ignored, minimized, or explained away. Thomas does not speak about revenge, but his actions suggest preparation. He believes that the truth will not surface unless pressure is applied from every direction. While Casey follows legal paths, Thomas and Mo walk the edges. gathering information that others overlook or choose not to see. This split approach creates tension that runs beneath every moment of the episode. Casey knows that Thomas is searching for answers too, and part of him is grateful. Another part is afraid of where this could lead. If the truth points toward powerful enemies, the consequences will not stop with arrests. They will ripple outward, touching Tate, the reservation, and everyone caught in between. Casey is forced to confront a painful reality. Justice and safety do not always align. Choosing one can endanger the other. As small clues begin to connect, a pattern of targeted violence becomes impossible to ignore. This was not an accident. It was a message. And messages demand responses. Casey feels the fire inside him grow stronger, threatening to overpower the discipline he has spent years building. The Marshals sense it too. Pete watches closely, knowing that the moment Casey stops thinking like an officer and starts thinking like a grieving husband, everything could fall apart. Yet he also knows that this fire is what makes Casey effective. The challenge is keeping it controlled. By the end of this section, the emotional stakes are clear. This is no longer just about finding who pulled the trigger. It is about stopping a cycle before it claims another generation. Tate is standing at a crossroads, Thomas is pushing against invisible walls, and Casey is caught in the middle, trying to hold everything together while it threatens to tear him apart. Marshals begins to reveal its true core here, a story about how grief, when ignored, becomes a weapon, and how close justice always is to becoming revenge. As the investigation deepens, Casey begins to realize that the enemy is not hiding in the shadows out of fear, but out of confidence. Every lead the Marshals follow seems to stop just short of the truth, blocked by paperwork, missing evidence, or witnesses who suddenly forget what they saw. This is not carelessness. It is design. Someone with reach is protecting the people responsible, and that realization shifts the tone of everything. Casey understands now that this case is not just dangerous because of violence, but because of power. The kind of power that does not need to pull a trigger to destroy lives. The pressure inside the team starts to build. Andrea's instincts tell her that someone on the inside is leaking information, and her refusal to stay quiet makes her a target. Belle notices patterns in behavior that suggest manipulation rather than coincidence, and her experience undercover gives her a quiet advantage. Miles, however, feels the weight of this case more personally than anyone expects. The echoes of what is happening remind him of every time justice failed his own people. He believes the law should protect the vulnerable, but he also knows how often it is used to shield the guilty. That internal conflict makes him dangerous in a different way, because he is no longer satisfied with waiting. Casey is pulled in opposite directions. Pete urges patience, warning that one wrong move could collapse the entire case. Thomas, operating outside the system, pushes for urgency, hinting that delays are costing lives. And then there is Tate. His behavior grows more unpredictable, his questions more direct. Casey begins to sense that his son is closer to the truth than anyone realizes, and that realization terrifies him. The thought that Tate might act on his own forces Casey to confront a brutal truth. The line between protecting the law and protecting his family is starting to blur. A critical discovery changes everything. The violence connected to Monica's death is part of something larger, something organized and ongoing. This is not about hatred alone. It is about control, land, and silencing voices that refuse to disappear. Casey feels the familiar pull toward decisive action, the instinct to end the threat before it spreads further. But this time, every option carries consequences that extend far beyond him. If he moves too fast, the truth dies with the suspects. If he moves too slow, someone else pays the price. By the end of this section, Casey stands at the edge of a choice that will define the rest of the series. Stay within the lines and risk losing everything he is trying to protect, or cross them and become something he knows he can never undo. Marshals tightens its grip here, making it clear that justice is not just about catching the guilty. It is about deciding how much of yourself you are willing to sacrifice to make sure the truth survives. Everything comes down to one night. Not because all the answers are revealed, but because every lie finally shows its weight. The Marshals close in on a lead that feels solid for the first time, yet even as the pieces start to align, Casey knows this is not an ending. It is a beginning disguised as resolution. The people responsible for Monica's death are not lone actors. They are part of a network that believes it is untouchable, and that belief is what makes them reckless. For Casey, that recklessness is an opening, but also a warning. The operation tests every bond formed in this first episode. Trust inside the team becomes essential because hesitation could cost lives. Andrea's willingness to speak up, even when it puts her in danger, proves why she was never meant to stay silent. Belle steps into a role that demands both empathy and deception, showing how dangerous kindness can be when paired with intelligence. Miles confronts the reality he tried to escape, understanding that protecting his people sometimes means standing directly in harm's way. And Pete, steady as ever, makes decisions that will follow him long after the case moves on, fully aware that leadership often means carrying guilt, so others do not have to. Casey, however, pays the highest price. As he gets closer to the truth, he realizes that justice will not give him peace. It will only give him clarity. The answers he finds do not bring Monica back, and they do not erase the damage done to Tate. What they do is strip away illusion. The world did not take his family because of fate or randomness. It took them because evil was allowed to operate unchecked. Accepting that truth hardens something inside Casey, not into rage, but into resolve. He understands now that this job is not temporary. It is the path he has chosen, whether he wanted it or not. The episode closes with a sense of unease rather than victory. Tate remains distant, carrying pain that has not yet found an outlet. Thomas and Mo continue their watchful presence, knowing that this fight is far from over. And Casey stands alone with his badge, fully aware that wearing it means living in the space between justice and loss. Marshals makes its promise clear here. This is a story where every truth has a cost, where every decision leaves a mark, and where the fight for justice never truly ends. Episode 1 does not ask if Casey will survive this world. It asks what kind of man he will become in order to face it.